Welcome to this explainer. We're going to jump right into a fascinating and absolutely crucial challenge in cross-border higher education partnerships. So imagine an education group gearing up to enter an unfamiliar market. They find a local partner that consistently presents itself as a university. Now that single word carries a quiet reassurance, doesn't it? It instantly implies that the institution is lawfully established, that it can confer degrees, that those degrees will be recognized, and that some robust regulatory authority stands right behind its quality. We actually expect an enormous amount of heavy lifting from just that one word, university. But that brings us right to the core question we are going to explore today. When institutions use the very same title, do they necessarily possess the same authority? Well, as we're going to see, institutional standing is not the same thing as legal permission, and a title resolves far fewer questions than a prospective partner usually assumes. To unpack this, we'll move through 6 distinct areas. 1. Identity versus institutional authority. 2. Conferring degree awarding powers. 3. Assuring quality and accreditation. 4. Navigating cross-border recognition. 5. Protecting the enrolled learner. And finally, 6. The due diligence lens. Section 1. Identity versus institutional authority. Okay, so there is a vital distinction we really need to make right out of the gate. A university title, in places where it exists as a protected marker, basically establishes institutional identity. It gives an institution its standing. But, and this is key, it absolutely does not, by itself, establish institutional authority. Because different jurisdictions assemble these legal permissions through entirely different bodies in different sequences and lodge the final decisive act at completely different levels, the title of university can sit on radically different foundations depending on which country you're looking at. The real danger of letting a title do the work of structural verification is perfectly captured by Rahul Sharma, who noted, "A university name may begin a partnership conversation. It cannot complete the due diligence behind it." That thought frames our entire inquiry today. We literally have to look behind the name. Section 2. Conferring degree awarding powers. You know, treating the United Kingdom, or indeed Europe, as a single uniform system is a really common error. Just look at England. Since 2018, the Office for Students acts as a statutory regulator there. It integrates registration, degree awarding powers, and the university title, all within a single framework. But cross the border into Scotland, a different route entirely, within the exact same state. There's no Office for Students in Scotland. Instead, under a 1992 Act, the Privy Council specifies an institution as competent to grant degrees, and they do that based on advice from the Scottish Government and the Quality Assurance Agency. Then look over at Ireland, which separates these questions yet again. Irish universities and technological universities are established and named directly by statute. These designated awarding bodies make their own awards. Providers that don't have their own powers don't just magically become awarding bodies. Instead, their specific programs have to be validated by Quality and Qualifications Ireland, or QQI. So the crucial takeaway here is that holding degree awarding powers does not automatically grant you a university title. Take England's highly specific nuance, for instance. To actually use the word university, an English provider must hold taught degree awarding powers that are not time-limited. But they also have to meet a very strict student number criterion. Their full-time equivalent higher education students must exceed 55% of the total student body, and more than half of those have to be studying at degree level or above. Think about that for a second. A college could hold full degree awarding powers, yet remain entirely ineligible for the university title, simply because its student profile doesn't meet that 55% threshold. Section 3. Assuring quality and accreditation. Now let's look at a really fascinating contrast between the Netherlands and Germany. In the Netherlands, the system places unusually strong legal weight on program accreditation. To confer recognized degrees, an organization first has to be recognized by the Ministry of Education as a legal entity providing higher education. But that recognition depends entirely on its programs being accredited by the NVAO, the Dutch and Flemish accreditation organization. So the decisive question there isn't just whether the institution is recognized, but whether the specific program is. Germany, on the other hand, distributes its quality assurance across a federal structure of 16 distinct Länder, or states.
Under Germany's joint accreditation system, program quality assurance is absolutely mandatory, but the specific route you take to get it is not. A program might be accredited directly, or the institution might have what's called system accreditation, meaning it's trusted to accredit its own programs, or they might use an approved alternative procedure. These decisions are taken by the German Accreditation Council. So, for an international partner reviewing a non-state German institution, the mere fact that it is non-state says absolutely nothing about its quality. It simply changes which authority you need to ask and which of these three specific routes you must verify.
Section 4. Navigating cross-border recognition. We have to clearly delineate these definitions because they are incredibly easy to mix up. Academic recognition, meaning whether a foreign qualification gives you access to further study or is comparable to a national one, is governed by the Lisbon Recognition Convention. It's actually often decided by the receiving higher education institution itself. Now, this is entirely separate from professional recognition, which is strictly a matter for the competent authority of a regulated profession. National information centers, like those in the European ENIC-NARC network, do provide assessments, but they do not make every final decision.
Because these recognition systems differ so widely, a vital habit for any university leader or recognition specialist is remembering that checking one register rarely ends the inquiry. Institutional standing, program accreditation, and professional recognition might each be verifiable only through completely different sources. You might need to check the REO, the Register of Institutions and Programs in the Netherlands, the Irish Register of Qualifications in Ireland, or specific land authorities in the German Accreditation Council if you're dealing with Germany.
Section 5. Protecting the enrolled learner. England serves as a highly explicit illustration of built-in learner protections. Registered providers there are required to publish a student protection plan, setting out exactly what happens if a course or an entire campus suddenly closes. It mandates things like continuation, teach-out arrangements, or financial compensation. They also have to belong to the independent complaints scheme run by the Office of the Independent Adjudicator, or OIA. Furthermore, if the regulator judges a provider to be at a material risk of closure, it can step in and direct specific measures to protect the students currently enrolled. However, we must not make the mistake of assuming this level of explicitness is a universal model. Learner protections are absolutely not uniform. The real-world consequences of a change in an institution's status differ sharply by jurisdiction and even by the specific student cohort. In the Netherlands, for instance, if a program loses its approved status, it immediately affects the qualification and student finance. But the position of current students turns on very specific transitional arrangements. Basically, continuation, academic records, and funding require precise, program-specific verification. You simply cannot assume that the word university throws a protective shield over the learner in the exact same way across borders.
Section 6. The due diligence lens.
So these 5 steps essentially form a structured set of questions, a lens, really, for evaluating any cross-border partnership. 1. What exactly is the institution legally recognized as and under whose authority? 2. What specific qualifications is it legally authorized to award? 3. What accreditation or validation applies to this particular program, and by which body? 4. Where and for what precise purpose, academic or professional, will the qualification actually be recognized? And 5. What specific legal mechanism is in place to protect the learner if these arrangements suddenly change? Applying this due diligence lens reveals a rather stark cross-border reality. In transnational education, whether we're talking about franchise arrangements, branch campuses, or direct market entry, responsibility for the final award and the student can rest with completely different parties in different countries. A home country title simply does not automatically carry its home country meaning or its legal authority across a border. An institution entitled to call itself a university at home might not be legally entitled to present itself that way elsewhere. Diligent, structural verification has to supersede a familiar institutional name every single time. The word university is certainly not empty. In most of these systems, it is hard-earned or officially conferred, and it carries immense weight. But it really is just the opening of an inquiry, not the conclusion of one. So, I'll leave you with this final thought as you apply this lens to your own future transnational reviews. When institutions share the same title, how much authority do they really share? Thank you for joining me for this explainer.